Dealing with the facts on pot, that is the topic of tonight's byline. Justin Trudeau was actually pushed and forced to answer questions on his plan to legalize pot, but it wasn't thanks to a journalist, rather a mother. Now, I'll grant you that some journalists have tried to get Trudeau to explain the one and only policy that he's willing to talk about. But in his controlled interactions with the media, he's been able to duck and dodge, avoid the question. But that didn't happen when Trudeau ran into Candice Kincaid in Steinbach, Manitoba. Miss Kincaid has worked with people dealing with drug addiction in inner-city Winnipeg, a part of Canada that knows all too well about the problems of substance abuse. Trudeau put forward his usual line that he wants to keep pot out of the hands of kids. But Miss Kincaid wasn't buying.
It's not really young people. We're dealing with the after effects. 30, 40, 50 years old who have lost their life due to addictions.
Yeah. Well, listen, addictions are a problem, whether it be alcohol, whether it be nicotine. Marijuana is actually less addictive than many others, but it's not a health food supplement.
Well, he's definitely right on that. Marijuana is not a health food supplement. But is pot really less addictive than alcohol or other legal substances? Because that's the claim always put forward by pot activists. And now Trudeau. Is this a real claim? That's the type of question we need to ask, because if we're going to have a real debate on this, then let's deal in facts. And we've already seen that Trudeau flubbed on the facts when it claimed that 475,000 people had criminal records for pot possession under Stephen Harper, when in reality, there were fewer than 54,000 people convicted of all drug possession charges since 2006 when the Conservatives came to power. So, there's the question. Is marijuana less addictive than, say, booze? Well, it appears that's up for debate. Some claim that pot isn't addictive at all because there's no physical withdrawal symptoms. But like drugs such as cocaine, which also has very few physical withdrawal symptoms, pot has strong psychological withdrawal systems. The American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual on Mental Disorders, it says that you can be addicted to pot. So what's the addiction rate? That too appears to be up for debate. At the low end, it's seen as being addictive to 9 to 10% of users. That's what Scientific American published in a rather pot-friendly essay last year. But a paper put out by Brown University says the addiction rate is much higher. Quote, it's estimated that 10 to 14% of users will become heavily dependent. And, says the same paper, 16% of those in addictions treatment are therefore marijuana addiction. How does that compare to alcohol addiction? It's tough. Just like marijuana addiction, it's measured in different ways. So far, the highest rate that I've seen cited is 15% of users, and that's an uncited source by the same Scientific American pot-friendly article I mentioned earlier. Some estimates, though, put alcohol addiction rate closer to 5%. I'd have to say that at this point, they're both looking to be in the same ballpark. Is Trudeau lying here? Maybe not, but we can say he's stretching the truth. So let's look at his other claims.
My concern is that right now we have a war on drugs that isn't working. We're funneling billions of dollars into criminal organizations and gangs. We're having our kids access pot easier than they're accessing alcohol. And we need to realize that the current prohibition just isn't working.
You know, I'll say it again. If the current prohibition isn't working, then why did Justin I Smoked Pot as an MP vote for the only bill Stephen Harper ever brought forward to bring about tougher sentences for pot dealers? But that's a whole other argument. Let's look at his claims. Is organized crime getting rich off of selling pot? I'm sure they are, but they're also getting rich off of selling cigarettes. One recent analysis of cigarette butts outside of government office buildings around Ottawa found roughly a third of cigarette butts were contraband, meaning illegal smokes, normally sold by organized crime. Another study on college and university campuses across Canada found a similar analysis. Organized crime sells cigarettes and gets rich off of what is a highly controlled, regulated, and taxed product. They do the same with alcohol, bars, strip clubs, and other legal means. Legalizing pot won't bankrupt organized crime. Next, Trudeau says that teens can access pot easier than alcohol. Here, the stats don't back him up at all. In fact, it's not even close. Health Canada's Canadian Alcohol and Drug Use Monitoring Survey takes a look at what substances kids use and abuse. According to this survey, 34% of 15 to 24-year-olds have tried pot. and 21.6% have tried it in the past year. This same survey, carried out by the bureaucrats Trudeau loves so much, well, it shows that 77.9% of that same age group, 15 to 24, had tried alcohol in their lifetime, 70.8% had tried it in the last 12 months, and 51% had used alcohol in the past 30 days. Trudeau's made similar claims in the past that, well, it's easier to get pot than cigarettes, and that's simply not true either. Health Canada measures smoking a little differently, but they do say that 12% of 15 to 19-year-olds are current smokers, and 21% of 20 to 24-year-olds are current smokers. As for ever trying tobacco, again, the ages don't exactly line up, but 39.9% of kids have tried tobacco in grades 10 to 12. Justin Trudeau can believe the best thing for Canada to do is legalize pot. He can campaign on that idea, but he can't make up his facts and go unchallenged. That's what he does, though, and most of the media won't say boo. Thankfully, Candace Canis did, and that's the byline.
Prohibitionists like Mr. Harper are going to have to justify, given facts and data, why the current approach, which doesn't keep our kids safe from marijuana, is worth continuing. And that's the heart of the discussion.
Well, the heart of the discussion is Justin's false numbers. Let's bring in Elise Mills. She is a political commentator in Vancouver. She's also a mother. And Elise, I'm guessing that, like Candace Canis, you're a little bothered by Justin Trudeau's cavalier stance.
I am. A lot of his claims, he claims that his argument is centered on policy and fact, and the reality is that it's not. We both know, Brian, what it's actually based upon. It's straight retail politics, isn't it? The reality out here in British Columbia is that he's missing the conversation. The conversation on the ground out here right now is that we're talking about addiction and whether or not our provincial government can actually afford to do increase addiction counseling services. We're not talking about legalization of pot being one of the most important things. We're talking about how parents especially are talking about how do they combat the issue of teen addiction. And I think that Candace made some very good points. Not only was she a mother, but she's also a woman that deals with addiction within her community. And we see it out here in Vancouver. This isn't about being cool and hip and selling this idea to 15 to 19-year-olds. It's about what happens later on. And I think Mr. Trudeau is playing very laissez-faire, loosey-goosey with what the reality around marijuana and other drug addictions are. The other thing is that I think, Brian, the message that Mr. Trudeau is actually sending is that it's okay to experiment, that this isn't a problem. I dare him to go down and speak to the mothers that have lost their children to addiction this past month here in British Columbia.
Well, and as parents, that's what we're worried about, is trying to direct our children in the right way. And when you get strange messages from political leaders, from law enforcement, from people in the justice community saying, oh, it's all right, don't worry about it, that undermines what parents might be saying.
Well, and you know, Brian, the conversation that's happening in Vancouver, and I'm sure you know, and the rest of Canada knows, that Vancouver has some serious issues around mental health and addiction in our city. And we're constantly having the conversation about how to combat that. I would much prefer Mr. Trudeau to be involved in the conversation around increased mental health services and addiction counseling services for teens. One of the themes that is going on in the political universe out here is whether or not we should make mandatory addiction services for children under the age of 19 here in British Columbia, because we have such a problem. I don't think Mr. Trudeau truly understands the severity and the consequences of the policy he's putting forward.
He just, you heard him say, well, it's not that addictive. I want to play another clip of him showing him being dismissive, especially when Candace Canis raised the issue of gateway drugs. So I'll play that clip and then we'll get to another fact. Here he is.
That is just going to further, from our end,
their
more
lives
people in our
are
shelters.
broken because of pot.
It's the gateway drug to the addiction.
Yes. The gateway argument is one that keeps coming back.
Sorry.
I've been listening to you. You need to listen to what I'm saying. Out of the hands of your teenager. And what I'm saying, beyond just access, it has to do with community, with peers, with parenting. Being tough on crime in the wrong way just doesn't work.
Yeah, but my goal,
I'm glad you agree.
my stuff is...
All right. Now, she's being dismissed, by the way, by some people because her husband worked with Vic Taves. So she's a conservative in a riding that, probably more than 50% of the people voted conservative, so they'll dismiss her. But Justin Trudeau, before he even knew that, was dismissive of the gateway drug argument. He was like an insolent teenager smiling and going, "Oh, Mom, I can't believe you're bringing that up." So let's bring up, an associate professor from Yale Medical University who actually did a study on whether there's a connection. And she found there is one. Her name's Lynn Filan. She said among both men and women, previous marijuana use was 2.5 times more likely than no previous marijuana use to be associated with subsequent abuse of prescription opioids. We're talking about OxyContin and other things that are real problems across Canada, including Vancouver.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just step back for a second, the irony on this is amazing. We have an expert talking to Mr. Trudeau, and he dismisses the expert and proclaims he is the expert. It's incredible to actually watch. I don't care who Candace's husband voted for or worked for. That doesn't diminish the hard work that she's done in the community. And I think it's ironic that one of the organizers of the event has to intervene with Mr. Trudeau and get him to calm down a bit so that he can express to Mr. Trudeau Candace's background. I find the whole thing absolutely insane. And I think it's very important that you bring up the facts around the Yale study, Brian, because that's exactly the message that Candace was trying to send. That's exactly...
And abuse of prescription drugs is becoming one of the biggest problems across North America right now.
And also the Harper campaign through Health Canada has done a very good job in making that an issue that parents have become aware of. And that's something that we're seeing out here. I don't know if that's something across the country, but out here in British Columbia, we're seeing a very aggressive campaign targeted towards parents of teens about what's in our medicine cabinets and actually looking at locking that up as well. I think that Mr. Trudeau's arguments around why pot is okay to experiment with are absolutely ridiculous. I don't think he's taking a look at the facts about, and I believe it's what we were referring to in the Yale study, that it has I hate to say gateway drug because there's a lot of commentators out here, Brian, who sort of chastise those of us who call it a gateway drug because they say that alcohol can be a gateway drug, and that's all very true.
And it can be. It's about risk behavior. Elise, we're going to have to wrap up there. We're going to have to wrap up there. But thanks for coming in. Great talking to you as always. Share your thoughts. Byline at sunmedia.ca. Justin and the facts. Are they ever friends? More to come.